Hi everyone, it's Lauren. As many of you will know, I have been working with the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction this year, which means I've been reading all of the books that have been shortlisted for the prize, and I'm going to be going to the ceremony next week on Wednesday, the 8th of June, when the winner is going to be announced. I've already read and reviewed 3 of the books that are on the shortlist, which are Ruby by Cynthia Bond, The Improbability of Love by Hannah Rothschild, which I reviewed in a video here a couple of weeks ago, and I also reviewed A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara last year when I read it in August for the Man Booker Prize. So I will link both of those videos in the description bar below if you would like to go and watch those. And so that just leaves 3 more books for me to discuss in this video, the first of which being The Portable Veblen by Elizabeth Mackenzie. This is a really difficult book to explain the plot of. It's mainly about a woman called Veblen who is happy-go-lucky, quirky, and she has just got engaged to a man called Paul, and it's about their relationship, about them meeting each other's families. But one of the main things that everybody seems to talk about when they talk about this book is the fact that Veblen believes that there is a little grey squirrel who lives in the attic of their house who can understand everything that she's saying. However, I don't think this book should be completely defined by that event, because really what's happening is that Veblen suffers from a lot of anxiety, and she's using this connection with the squirrel, in order to cope with adult life and the real world, helping her deal with the fact that she's just got engaged, and that adult married life, which is yet to come, might look a little bit different from how she dreamt it when she was a child. And this connection with the squirrel is a connection with her childhood. What it is about is quite hard to define. I really enjoyed reading this book. Normally characters like Veblen, who are maybe quirky for the sake of being quirky, tend to annoy me, but I didn't get this at all from this book. I really loved hearing from Veblen, and she's got an incredibly caricatured, overbearing mother, and her fiance Paul's family are from a family of hippies, and everybody's quite extreme and really interesting in their own right, and everybody is flawed in this book, and the way they interact with each other I found really interesting, and I just loved being with the characters. I felt it less of a page turner, less of, oh, what's going to happen next in the plot, and more of just a leisurely read that I really enjoyed. I do think that if you're someone that is really driven by the plot of a book, then you might be frustrated with this, because it's sort of about a lot of things and touches on lots of topics. But then at the same time, it sort of feels like it's going nowhere when you're reading it. It's a really interesting experience. But if that sort of thing sounds appealing to you, then I would definitely recommend picking this up. The next book that I read on the Bailey's shortlist was The Glorious Heresies by Lisa McInerney. Now, to be brutally honest, judging by this cover and judging by the blurb, this is probably not a book I would have picked up if it hadn't been for the Bailey's Prize. This is set in Cork in Ireland, and it is about gangster culture. That the first thing that happens in the first chapter is that this old woman, Maureen, accidentally kills someone who has come into her house. She hits him on the head with a rock, and then she thinks, oh, okay, I've killed someone, and calls her son, who is the leader of the mob in Cork, to say, can you sort this out for me? So I was really interested to see why this was shortlisted, because it didn't seem like something that I would be naturally drawn to. In the end, I was really impressed with this book. It deals with a lot of topics that you would expect to come with gang culture, so drugs and prostitution and violence, but it really looks at the people caught up in those situations and why they happened to be there, and you can see it coming down through the generations as well. So when parents are involved in this criminal part of society, then children end up getting involved, or at least they get affected by it. And this book actually spans about 5 or 6 years, which I wasn't really expecting. And the beginnings event when Maureen kills this man is basically the catalyst for everything else that happens, and the people that get involved either covering him up, or people who knew the poor man in real life. You see how this event affects their lives. And what I found impressive as well is that there are a lot of characters in here, but you do feel like you know each of them very well, and each of them are related in different ways. So there might be one person who's a prostitute, and then she has a drug dealer, but then that drug dealer is a son of someone else, and you kind of get their own stories, and you see how there's a ripple effect between their behaviour and what they choose to do, and all the people that they're linked to. So I definitely learned not to judge a book by its cover on this one, and actually I think the way it is marketed perhaps undermines what the book is, and I think there's another book like that on the shortlist, which I will talk about at the end of this video as well. And finally, the last book on the Bailey's shortlist that I read was The Green Road by Anne Enright. Now, this is an Irish family, I would say saga, but it doesn't really span enough time to be called a saga, but it's about a mother and 4 children. What's interesting about this book is that it doesn't follow a really direct story arc, but you do get snapshots from each of the children's lives. So in the first chapter, they're all in Ireland and they are children, and then directly after in the next chapter, you're with one of the sons who's now in his 20s in New York, and then one of the other chapters, one of the other sons is in Africa, but their lives don't really come together until an event at the end of the book, which really is the story of the book. The story of the book is what happens at the end, and it's about their family. But we don't actually spend a lot of time at the end when everybody is together. You actually get a flavour for everybody's lives individually, and one of the more touching chapters is a chapter from their mother's perspective, who is old and all of her children have grown up and left her, and she's sort of feeling like she doesn't have anything left, and she's one of those overbearing mothers. It sounds like where nothing her children ever does is good enough for her, but she just has so much love for them. So it's a really interesting relationship that all of them have with their mother. Each of the children has a really different relationship with her, and it's just a very subtle book. It's woven together very skillfully, and it's very clever how you just, without being told very much, it seems, it feels like you know these people really well, and without seemingly very much plot, it's like you understand everything that's going on in this family. You get their dynamics. So it is very much about the personal, while focusing on a lot more than that. So it's a really interesting read. I did enjoy it. It reads very, very quickly, and to be honest, having now read all 6 of the books on the shortlist, I think this might be my favourite to win. Not because as I was reading it, I really, really was enjoying it. I'm very impressed with the craft, and I'm very impressed with how everything fits together. And I think as an overall book, this is probably my favourite to win the prize, which is an interesting question, because what is your criteria for which book should win a literary prize? Is it big due to the language, like how well you think the book has been constructed? Is it to do with how much you're enjoying the story? I mean, everybody's going to look at this very differently. I have all 6 of the books here, but I'm not going to be able to hold up all of them all at once to show you. But I mean, it's a very, very interesting shortlist. I really don't know which book is going to win, because you have books like The Improbability of Love, whose cover and marketing I feel is so chiclety, in the same way that this is so like an action, like a gangster movie. Like, this reminded me of Snatch. And then I feel you have Ruby and A Little Life, which both talk about really harrowing experiences of violence and sexual abuse, which are handled in really, really different ways. To me, these are quite similar books, but I just don't know how you can compare these to a mystery story about the art world. And I mean, it's really, really interesting and a very, very varied list. So of all of them, I almost feel like The Green Road is probably the most, not boring, but maybe the most conventional of the books. And yet, for me, I feel like it was written the best. I think this had the best balance of all of them, of being really well written, really impressive in terms of how realised the characters are. And also I enjoyed reading it, and not all of these books I really enjoyed while I was reading them. Like the Glorious Heresies, I am very impressed with. As I was reading it, I wasn't really, really loving it. I wasn't that invested, but when I finished it, I had an appreciation for what happened there, and I am impressed with it as a book. So, I mean, I don't know is the answer. I really don't know which one should win or which one's going to win. Let me know if you have read any of these, which one you want to win the Bailey's Prize. I would be really interested to hearing your thoughts, because I think a lot of these books are actually quite divisive, which makes a change for a literary prize actually. So do leave a comment below if you would like to discuss any of these books. I always love hearing from you. If you're new to my channel, you can subscribe for more videos, lucky you, by clicking the little red subscribe video, which is just below this video on the left hand corner, and I will see you next time. Bye! And she does a lot of videos on books, but more specifically, she does videos on medieval history and medieval literature and Anglo-Saxon poetry and just things that she's learning about, and I find them really interesting and really different, and she's just such a delight to listen to. I find her voice really relaxing.